Chag Sameach. I'm going to share a few words before we continue with reading Megillat Ruth today. I hope everyone had a wonderful Tikkun Leil Shavuot. It was truly special here, and I hope your Shavuot's off to a good start today. 7 years ago, I had an experience in Siberia that was both the best kind of heartwarming and a harrowing kind of heartbreaking. I helped officiate a joint B'nai Mitzvah for 50 Jews from the former Soviet Union whose connection to their Jewish roots had been all but stamped out by communism. The purpose of this trip through the Joint Distribution Committee was to teach a week-long crash course on Judaism, culminating in a joint B'nai Mitzvah for this highly dedicated intergenerational group plucked from the ashes of history, reclaiming their Judaism. In some cases, 3 generations from the same family, teen, parent, and grandparent, were called up together to the Torah for the first time. They had chosen their Hebrew names. They threw candy at each other. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to say sun-kissed jelly candy in Russian, so they bought hard candy. That didn't go well. During our week of study, one participant, Marina, came to me in tears. She was a star student. She was the student who stayed after class was over and everyone else had left because she wanted to learn more. She told me that she had a Jewish grandfather, but that her mother wasn't Jewish. "Doesn't my mother have to be Jewish?" she asked me. "That's our halakha, yes," I said. And in one instant, the whole premise of our trip was called into question. We were celebrating the B'nai Mitzvah of this large group, affirming their Judaism, their Jewishness, when many were not, by our standards, halachically Jewish. Through a brutal history of forced assimilation, through the inability to teach the next generation and keep the flame of Judaism alive, many found themselves outside the halachic boundary of how we define a Jewish person. "I know I have a Jewish soul," Marina told me, as if that should be enough. When we read the book of Ruth in just a few moments, this Shavuot, I think of Marina, because Ruth busts through an impossible boundary. Ruth is not a Jew, at least not at first. She's a Moabite. But she becomes our most famous convert. And yet, we read in Deuteronomy, "Lo yavo Ammoni u'Moavi bikal Adonai." No Ammonite or Moabite shall enter into the congregation of God. So how does she do it? Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, loses her husband and 2 sons and tells her 2 bereft daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, "Return to your mother's house." She actually turns them away 3 times, saying shovna, which means turn. And so our rabbis teach us we are to turn away an aspiring convert 3 times to see whether they're truly dedicated or not, to see if, like Orpah, they aren't truly committed, or if, like Ruth, they will cling to Judaism the way Ruth clings to her mother-in-law when she says, "Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you." We hear in Ruth's emotional speech and in Marina's passionate plea a Jewish soul's recognition that it has found its way back home. As a rabbi, I uphold the necessity of comprehensive study for a year and the prescribed halachic conversion rituals culminating in mikveh immersion. But the God I believe in embraces Ruth as Jewish the moment she says, "Where you go, I go," and embraces Marina as Jewish the moment she says, "I know I have a Jewish soul." So I asked Marina, "Why not convert and cover your bases? Make it official." She explained to me that philosophically, emotionally, she was a conservative Jew. They don't really have a conservative community here in Siberia. They do have Chabad. Of course, there's a Chabad in Siberia. She asked me, "Would you move here and help build a strong conservative community. I didn't know you could voluntarily move to Siberia. Why don't we keep learning together remotely, I offered, and then you can come to the States to complete your conversion at one of our mikvahs here. She explained it wouldn't do any good. It wouldn't be seen as legitimate by the rabbinic authorities back home in Siberia, not unless it was Orthodox. Boundaries are important. We'd be lost without them. I just took a group from the Bridge, our 20s and 30s group downtown, to see Fiddler at Playhouse Square. Tradition makes us strong and keeps us anchored in a fast-paced, ever-changing, chaotic world. But the question is, which boundaries serve and protect us, and which are meant to be challenged? Which are the ones we must preserve at all costs, and which actually make demands on our creativity, ingenuity, and moral imagination? First, we know that boundaries can be necessary and protective. When God gives us Torah, we just read this morning, God sets clear boundaries around the base of the mountain. Boundaries we are not to cross, lest we be shot through. No cattle are permitted even to graze at the base of Mount Sinai. Every Havdalah we bless God, Hamavdil ben Kodesh lechol, the one who separates between holy and profane. We bless God, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, the one God who singles us out, the Jewish people, from among the other nations as a unique, sacred people with a unique, sacred purpose. Boundaries help create and reinforce identity and values. The rabbis teach that one who builds a siag, a fence, around Torah is praiseworthy. Candlelighting for Shavuot was at 7:42 p.m. last night. That was the official time when you look it up. But you actually could have lit the candles up until 8 p.m. But we give ourselves an 18-minute buffer as a fence, a siag around the Torah, like when Rabbi Alex tells me to pick up Noah from daycare at 5 p.m. because she doesn't know that I know that daycare actually closes at 5:15. But building a fence around Torah helps protect our relationships with God and also our marriages. At the same time, we know that throughout our history, boundaries have also taken the oppressively insulating form of ghetto walls, the gulag, the concentration camp, or even country clubs that in recent memory would bar Jews from its golf courses and swimming pools. Given all the walls others have designed to forcibly keep us in or to forcibly keep us out, shouldn't we think carefully about the boundaries we construct around ourselves that would deprive us of our Ruths and our Marinas? When his story begins, the great Rabbi Akiva, perhaps our greatest sage, wasn't even allowed inside the Beit Midrash, the study hall. He was poor, he was illiterate, and didn't have the means to start learning until his 40s. He thirsted for Torah, but was actually turned away by the bouncer who would guard the Beit Midrash like it was Cleveland's hottest club, Hex. Is that not Cleveland's hottest club? So what does Rabbi Akiva do? He climbs onto the roof of the Beit Midrash like a fiddler, and he peers through the skylight, trying to glean as much Torah as he can from that vantage point. Except it's the dead of winter, and he freezes up there like a Los Angelino in Siberia. Thankfully, Shemaiah and Avtilion, the revered heads of the Beit Midrash, notice Akiva's shadow and come to his rescue. Even though it was Shabbat, they brought him inside and kindled a fire to thaw him off and save his life. Shavuot celebrates the giving of Torah. And the story of Ruth, which we're about to read, is the story of an outsider looking in, which challenges us to notice who isn't in the room. Who's on the margins, gleaning what they can like Ruth, gathering sheaves of barley on the outskirts of Boaz's field. Boaz, a kind man, who opens his door and shares his bread with a stranger. Who's on the margins, like Akiva, peering in to glean whatever Torah he might learn through a window. Many boundaries are there to protect us, and we should uphold them. But our tradition also reminds us, like the first line in Robert Frost's Mending Wall, something there is that doesn't love a wall. When does Torah ask us to construct a siag, a fence? And when does Torah ask us to think creatively about how to bust through boundaries, to make the kind of inclusive, vibrant, and just society God really wants? Not through the neglect of Torah, but through the careful, close, loving read of Torah, what Shavuot calls us to do. Lo yavo Ammoni uMoavi bikal Adonai, no Ammonite or Moabite shall enter into the congregation of God. This law prohibits Moabite from joining our people, conclude the rabbis, but it does not prohibit a Moabitess. That's technically how the rabbis justify Ruth's conversion, though I suspect for most of us, she had us at hello. We can roll our eyes at this rabbinic loophole. Honestly, it's tempting to do that. But we can also recognize the beauty of reading Torah so closely, so narrowly, it actually broadens and opens our hearts. The rabbis do this time and again. And so Ruth and Boaz beget Obed, and Obed begets Jesse, Yishai, and Jesse begets David, King David, whose line we believe will usher in the era of the Messiah. Redemption hinges on whether we have the chutzpah to push boundaries, sometimes when warranted, and treat each other with chesed, loving kindness, always. What if instead of turning each other away 3 times, we turn the Torah over and over and over again? What if we stay up all night and study Torah so closely we discover possibilities we never considered before? We read in Mishnah Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors, turn it over and turn it over again, for everything is in it. Look into it and become gray and old therein, and do not move away from it, for you have no better portion than it. Everything is in it. The keys to a more just and welcoming society, the keys to ushering in the age of the Mashiach, everything is in it if only we have the reverence, discipline, and moral imagination to confront a boundary and assess whether it helps us or it hurts us, whether it's a load-bearing wall or meant to be moved. Well, that's our job. God gives us Torah, but we are God's active partners in the ongoing attempt to truly understand this miraculous gift we're given. One final rabbinic tale, which is too long for a night of study that we've already had and for Ruth coming up, but I'm going to do it because this celebrates Torah. I'm giving us one more. Elisha ben Abuya is a famous rabbi turned heretic. He even gets a new name, Acher, which means other. Like Marina, like Akiva, like Ruth, he is labeled the other. When Elisha ben Abuya dies, they come to his student, Rabbi Meir, and tell him, the grave of your teacher is burning. I think we're meant to understand this as a sort of punishment for his heresy during his lifetime. Before we continue with the Midrash, some important context. When Ruth is looking for a redeemer, for a close kinsman to marry in order to build up her late husband's legacy, she sneaks one evening into Boaz's threshing floor where he's resting. She asks him to spread his garment over her as a sign of protection and affection. Boaz responds, "Stay tonight, though not to be intimate. It will be in the morning if he, that is a closer kinsman, will redeem you, good, he will redeem. But if he will be unwilling to redeem you, I will redeem you." Back to our Midrash. Rabbi Meir spreads his garment over the fire, consuming the grave of his teacher. Quoting Boaz, Rabbi Meir says, "Stay tonight. It will be in the morning if he will redeem you, good, he will redeem." What does that mean? What does the Midrash mean by that? Rabbi Meir is pleading that the soul of his rabbi, who as a heretic crossed boundaries in his lifetime that he should not have crossed, be allowed to rest in peace until his soul crosses that ultimate boundary between this world, which is night, and the world to come, which is morning. Quoting Boaz again, Rabbi Meir says, "If he," meaning God, "will redeem you, good, he will redeem. But if he will be unwilling to redeem you, I will redeem you." Quoting Ruth, the book of Ruth. The chutzpah of our rabbis Rabbi Meir is telling God, either you accept this Torah scholar right now, or when I die, my soul will intercede on his behalf until you let him in. At that moment, we read, the fire subsides. As we celebrate Shavuot, we honor the boundaries around the mountain that made the giving of Torah possible. And, armed with deep love and knowledge of Torah, we also challenge boundaries in order to make Judaism a bigger tent, where no Ruths are turned away, where no Akivas freeze on the roof, and where people like Marina, plucked from the ashes of history, should never have to feel burnt by her own people as well. I don't have an answer for how to address the ongoing problem of welcoming Jews of the former Soviet Union back into the halachic fold, especially given that this specific program had to be halted since the outbreak of the war. But I find an inspiring charge that we might all do well to consider when faced with whatever boundary stands in the way of the world as it is and the world as it ought to be. If you redeem it, good. And if not, I will. Chag Sameach. We continue.